Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at a column from page number 6 of the daily edition. In this column, the writer carries out a critical evaluation of the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission with regard to local governments. See, the Finance Commission is a constitutional body that is constituted as per the provisions of Article 280 of the Indian Constitution. Its key responsibility is to provide for the devolution, that is, both vertical and horizontal devolution of resources from the central pool of divisible taxes. The percentage of devolution from the union to the states becomes your vertical devolution, and the percentage of distribution amongst the states becomes the horizontal devolution. So, to carry out this task, the Finance Commission is constituted under Article 280 by the President once in every 5 years. And this commission consists of a chairman and 4 other members who are appointed by the President. The Parliament may by law determine the qualifications for the chairman and the members of the Finance Commission, and the primary duty of this commission is to decide upon the distribution between the union and the states of the net proceeds of taxes, which also has to be divided and allocated between the states as per their respective share of contribution and as per their developmental requirements. The Finance Commission also provides recommendations to the President with regard to the principles that should govern the grants in aid of the revenues of the states out of the Consolidated Fund of India. Then, more importantly, it also provides recommendations to the devolution of resources to the local governments. That is, after the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment, Part 9 and Part 9A were added to the Constitution, which deal with Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies, respectively. Following this amendment, Article 280 was also amended, and the Finance Commission was given the responsibility to suggest measures that are needed to augment or supplement the resources of the panchayats and the municipalities based on the recommendations of the state finance commissions that are set up under Article 243I. So, in short, the Finance Commission plays a critical role in deciding upon the devolution and allocation of resources to the state governments and as well as to the local governments, which form the third tier of administration. The 15th Finance Commission, headed by N.K. Singh, has submitted its recommendations to the President, and the report has been tabled recently in the Parliament. So the writer carries out a critical evaluation of these recommendations, with specific focus on recommendations related to the local governments. The writer says that the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission has a lot of positives because it provides for a significant increase in vertical devolution of resources for the local governments. Earlier, the 11th Finance Commission had allocated a share of just 0.78% from the divisible pool to the local governments, with a total sum of 10,000 crore rupees being set aside for the panchayats and the municipalities. Compared to this, the 15th Finance Commission makes a huge jump and it sets aside 4.23% of the divisible pool of resources, with a total allocation of 4.36 lakh crore rupees. Compared to the 14th Finance Commission, this is a 52% increase in vertical devolution. But see, out of this, around 70,000 crore rupees has been earmarked for primary healthcare centers considering the pandemic. But even if you take that out, still the vertical devolution increases by 4.19% as compared to the previous recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission. So this higher devolution of resources to the local governments is definitely appreciable and much needed, as the panchayats and the municipalities are at the very forefront of delivering social justice and social protection, and especially during a pandemic, they play a critical role in containing the health and the economic crisis that we are facing. Another positive recommendation is that the share of specified items of expenditure for local governments has gone up to 60%, and this is in line with the trend that was set by the previous finance commissions. See, starting from the 11th Finance Commission, local grants have been tied to specific items of expenditure in order to incentivize the local governments to focus on priority areas with regard to socio-economic development. So for certain specific local subjects mentioned under Part 9 and Part 9A, dedicated local grants are given by the Finance Commission in order to give exclusive focus to priority areas. And the 15th Finance Commission has raised this share of specified items of expenditure to 60%, and the allocation of these grants have been linked to critical subjects such as drinking water, rainwater harvesting, sanitation, etc. The writer is of the opinion that these subjects that have been identified by the 15th Finance Commission, they are in line with our national priorities and they also boost the spirit of cooperative federalism. But however, despite these positive recommendations, there are several shortcomings as far as the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission with regard to local governments is concerned. See, the last few finance commissions had came out with an innovative technique to incentivize local governments to improve their performance and efficiency. They did this by coming out with performance-based grants under which specific conditions and criteria would be laid out, and those panchayats and municipalities meeting these conditions and criteria, they would be provided higher allocation based on their ability to prove the quality of decentralized governance in their jurisdiction. For example, the 13th Finance Commission had earmarked 35% of local grants as performance-linked grants, wherein 6 conditions were identified by the Finance Commission to evaluate the performance of panchayats, and 9 conditions were identified for municipalities to evaluate their performance. Based on their performance in these respective categories, they would be provided a higher or lower share of allocation, thus incentivizing and motivating these local institutions to strive towards achieving higher quality of decentralized governance. For example, the Finance Commission would lay out standards for certain services such as the quality of drinking water or solid waste management, or place a condition that the local bodies should provide for the establishment of an independent ombudsman to check corruption and inefficiency in the delivery of services. If the local bodies were meeting these conditions and criteria, based on their performance, grants would be allocated to them, thereby triggering a healthy competition amongst the grassroots institutions. The 15th Finance Commission retains this provision of performance-linked grants, but however, the share has been brought down and it has been reduced to just around 8,000 crore rupees. And even these performance-linked grants are exclusively meant only for urban local bodies, and panchayats have been entirely excluded. The writer says that such performance-linked grants have a transformative potential, especially with regard to decentralized governance. But by reducing its significance, the 15th Finance Commission might end up demotivating the local bodies to strive towards better performance. The next shortcoming lies in the failure of the 15th Finance Commission to address the failure in financial reporting of the local institutions. The next shortcoming of the 15th Finance Commission's recommendations is that usually the Finance Commissions go into a lot of details with regard to specific services that especially have an impact on local issues of governance. For example, subjects such as healthcare, air pollution, drinking water, social justice, etc. are given high priority by the Finance Commissions, and they often list out specific and clear-cut details of these essential services that are supposed to be delivered by the local governments. By providing for such specific details, the Finance Commission creates an opportunity for holding the local governments accountable for their failure, and unfortunately, the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission is short on these details. The writer says that the 15th Finance Commission should have strived to define a minimum public service for every citizen, irrespective of their residential location. A set of minimum public services with predefined quality standards should have been defined by the 15th Finance Commission in order to improve local governance and hold the institutions accountable for their failure. The next shortcoming is that Finance Commission is primarily focused on striking a balance between the financial needs of the union and the states. But at the same time, it cannot ignore the fact that it also needs to strike a balance with the financial needs of local governments And this key aspect has not at all been taken into account by the 15th Finance Commission. The need for balancing the financial requirements of local governments has not been explicitly recognized, and hence the writer reminds the Finance Commission of its duties under Article 280, Clause 3, Subclause BB, and as well as under Subclause C, which mandates the Finance Commission to provide recommendations to augment the resources of panchayats and municipal bodies based on the recommendations of the State Finance Commission. Then finally, the 15th Finance Commission follows the same criteria that was followed by the 14th Finance Commission, wherein it determined the distribution of grant to states for local governments based on the population data of 2011 census with a 90% weightage and 10% weightage given to the area. The same population and area criteria has been adopted by the 15th Finance Commission as well, thereby defeating the objective of equity. Hence, the writer says that there is a need for greater recognition for the financial needs of the third tier of governance. And if we have to strengthen decentralization in the country and to improve the performance of our local governments, we need to fiscally empower them. Now let's take up another column from page number 6, in which the Minister of State for Home Affairs, G. Kishan Reddy, defends the latest amendments that have been introduced to the Government of NCT Act. See, back in 1991, through a constitutional amendment, Article 239AA and Article 239AB were introduced into the Constitution, followed by the adoption of the Government of NCT Act, which defines the unique structure and unique functions of the Delhi government, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, and the Delhi legislature. As we all know, Delhi has been provided with the elected legislature despite being a union territory, and the elected government is responsible for administering a set of state and concurrent subjects. But however, the key subjects of police, land, and public order have been reserved for the center, that is the President of India, who exercises his powers through the offices of the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. In these three key matters, the decisions of the President is not discretionary, rather is guided by the central government, that is the Ministry of Home Affairs, which looks after center-state relations. So this shared jurisdiction between the Delhi government and the center, and the conflict between the elected legislature of Delhi and the Lieutenant Governor's office, has always led to a major controversy in the Union Territory. See, this unique structure of constitutional institutions arises in Delhi because Delhi is also the national capital of the country. By virtue of being the national capital, it functions as the seat of the sovereign power, and it acts as the seat of the central government, the parliament, the Supreme Court, and it also plays host to diplomatic missions of foreign countries. So on these aspects of governance, the center would definitely like to retain its jurisdiction, especially on three key subjects, that is police, land, and public order. But despite this, the elected government of Delhi and the elected legislature had been given a jurisdiction of its own. But even then, several conflicts have arisen between the office of the Lieutenant Governor and the government of Delhi. This has largely happened due to excessive political interference from the center in matters concerning the administration and governance of Delhi. So to put an end to this conflict once for all, the center came out with an amendment bill seeking to amend the Government of NCT Act, through which it has tried to designate the term government under the Act to mean the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. This bill was recently passed by the Parliament, and it ended up triggering a major controversy because opposition parties have alleged that the center is destroying federalism in the country by snatching away the powers of an elected government and an elected legislature in its attempt to run Delhi through the office of Lieutenant Governor, who is an unelected official. In the light of these accusations, the Union Minister has written a column to defend the stand of the government, and he says that these amendments actually enhances cooperative federalism and it doesn't destroy federalism as alleged by the opposition parties. According to the Government of India, this latest amendment clears the ambiguity surrounding the inconsistent definition of the term government in the Government of NCT Act, and by designating the term government to mean the office of Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. To substantiate his stand, the minister refers to an incident in 2017 when the then Lieutenant Governor of Delhi had written to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Delhi stating that the President had considered the Delhi Netaji Subhash University of Technology Bill and he had directed that the bill be returned to the Legislative Assembly of Delhi due to the poor definition that was used while drafting this bill. Following the return of the bill to the Legislative Assembly, the Delhi government and the elected legislature itself defined the term government to mean the office of the Lieutenant Governor, and this modified bill was sent to obtain the President's assent. So the minister says that when the Delhi Legislative Assembly itself had previously accepted that the term government means the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, then why is an unnecessary controversy being created right now? According to the minister, the definition of government in the Act was always ambiguous and this was leading to confusion. And through these latest amendments, the government has only sought to rectify the inconsistent definition and provide for a rules-based framework in order to enable smooth functioning of administration in Delhi through joint cooperation and partnership between the central government and the Delhi government. The minister says that the Modi government has always prioritized the objective of promoting cooperative federalism, and he states that the Modi government has always seen state governments as equal partners in the country's development. He refers to the erstwhile Planning Commission to highlight how the sovereignty and the jurisdiction of state governments was being compromised in front of unelected officials, as the Planning Commission, which was a non-constitutional body, had been given complete powers to determine grants and devolution to states. The minister states that the Modi government removed this abnormality by abolishing the Planning Commission and replacing it with the Niti Aayog, which only functions as a think tank for the government. He states how the Modi government has introduced several reforms, including the GST, the restructuring of several central schemes, and the adoption of the recommendations made by the 15th Finance Commission, which provided for higher devolution to the states. He says that the Modi government, through such policy initiatives, has shown great flexibility towards the states in the spirit of upholding cooperative federalism because the center looks at states as equal partners in development. So that being the case, there is no question of center breaching the jurisdiction of the states or destroying federalism. And he says that for center-state relations to be smooth, there needs to be trust and cooperation between the center and the states, and their roles and duties and responsibilities will have to be clearly defined without any scope for confusion. But in the case of Delhi, by virtue of it being the national capital, there was a lot of confusion around the word government, and the center has only tried to clear this confusion by clearly delineating and defining the term government to mean the Lieutenant Governor, because such a well-defined chain of command is needed to provide for smooth administration. Considering the unique case of Delhi, being both a union territory with elected legislature and being the national capital of the country, it was very essential to clearly define as to what constitutes the term government in this act. And accordingly, the center has defined the word government to mean the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, which was previously accepted by the Delhi legislature and the Delhi government itself. The minister concludes by saying that the parliament has its own jurisdiction along with the central government as far as administration of Delhi is concerned with regard to subjects of police, land and public order. But at the same time, the jurisdiction of the Delhi legislature and the government remains untouched, and the Delhi government and the legislature is still free to exercise its complete jurisdiction over several state and concurrent subjects. The second question, the government has said that the amendments to the Government of NCT Act enhances cooperative federalism. Do you agree? Critically evaluate. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the comment section below. This concludes our discussion for today. Thanks for watching.